Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jared Lombard, and welcome to the ARC webinar series, How the Clean Energy Industry is Changing. I'm with some great speakers today, but before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few technical information because it's been a few months since we've had a webinar. So we're using the GoToWebinar format and interface. You are in listen-only mode. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation by typing that into the control panel where it says questions. We also will be posting chat messages in there throughout the webinar for links or for more information. We'll also be recording this webinar and it'll be posted on the ARC webinar library page as well. If you lose the image of the screen, we just recommend that you kind of identify the blue flower icon and just click that, and everything should pop back up on your main window as well. And I'm going to turn it over to our moderator today, David Jaguar, and he'll introduce today's panelists.
Thank you, Jared. Good afternoon. My name is David Jaguar, and I work in the Research and Analytics Group at the Atlanta Regional Commission, and I will be your moderator for today. It's my great honor to participate with our panelists in this conversation on the clean energy industry and the great promise and potential challenges found in this critical and dynamic sector. I would now like to introduce our audience to today's three panelists. Our first panelist is Trey Leslie with Georgia Power Company. Trey serves as the Customer Engagement Manager in the Renewable Development Organization. In this role, Trey leads a team responsible for all customer renewable programs, solar analysis, and interconnection of customer solar projects. Prior to this role, Trey served as the Assistant to the Senior Vice President of Northwest Region. In this position, Trey was responsible for assisting the Northwest Region leadership team with a variety of strategic projects and initiatives within the Regional External Affairs Organization. Trey joined Southern Company in 2004 as an intern student, where he worked in the Research and Environmental Affairs Organization in Birmingham, Alabama. Since hiring on full-time in 2008, Trey has held roles of Region Distribution Engineer, Engineering Supervisor, Distribution Control Center Supervisor, and Area Manager, where he was responsible for all customer service and operation activities in his areas. In the community, Trey serves on the Tech Bridge Board of Directors. He is a graduate of Leadership Rockdale, Leadership Toombs Montgomery, Leadership Barrow, and the Georgia Academy for Economic Development. A native of Stone Mountain, Georgia, Trey received a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Alabama A&M University, a Master of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Georgia Tech, as well as his MBA from Mercer University. Welcome, Trey. Our second panelist today, Allie Kelly, serves as the Executive Director of the RAY. In that role, she leads the nonprofit organization that has built the nation's only publicly accessible living laboratory for transportation innovation. Allie was recruited to lead the RAY as its first Executive Director in 2015. Since then, she has helped the organization to implement and build over 12 groundbreaking, world-leading technology demonstrations, including the first solar road in the United States and the world's first public demonstration of a drive-through tire safety station. She is a frequent public speaker and delivered keynote remarks about the RAY from the main stage at transportation, environmental, and technology industry conferences around the world, including the U.S. Transportation Research Board, AASHTO, Verge, the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, and in 2019, TEDx Atlanta, WTS, and MOVE. She was the recipient of the 2018 Atlanta Technology Professionals Impact Award and was listed as the 100 Women to Know by Engineering Georgia in 2018 and 2019. A Georgia native, Allie earned a BA in Political Science from the University of Georgia. She has over 15 years of experience working in public policy, first as a lobbyist for UPS in Washington, D.C., then returning to Atlanta and founding Georgia Watch, the state's only consumer watchdog organization. In 2009, she joined former Lieutenant Governor Pierre Howard at the Georgia Conservancy as its Senior Vice President. Ali and the trustees of the Ray C. Anderson Foundation partnered with Georgia Tech and the Georgia Conservancy on a net zero highway feasibility study for the project that would become the Ray. Welcome, Ali. Our third panelist today is Andrea Pinabel. Andrea has served as the president of South Face Institute since 2017. South Face Institute is a nonprofit founded in 1978 that advances a regenerative future, including healthy communities, resource efficiency, and clean energy solutions at the intersection of the built and natural environments. Prior to joining South Face, she served as the Vice President of Sustainability, Global Citizenship at Starwood Hotels and Resorts, where she led the strategy, operations, and integration for Starwood's global sustainability programs and its related philanthropic efforts. Prior to that, she served as the director of the Sustainable Cities Institute and program manager of sustainable community development with the Home Depot Foundation. Andrea earned a BS in chemical engineering from Iowa State University and brings over 25 years of wide-ranging sustainable business and operations expertise. She serves on the boards of 2030 districts and Center for Responsible Travel. She has also been honored with multiple awards, including being among Georgia Trend Magazine's 2020 Notable Georgians, Atlanta Magazine's Atlanta 500 in 2020 and 2021, a 2018 Energy Leader 75, and Smart CEO Magazine's 2015 award honoring visionary leadership in the commercial real estate industry. Welcome, Andrea. Let us turn now to our first panelist, Trey Leslie, to learn more about his work at Georgia Power.
Thank you, David. See if I can get my screen pulled up. All right, David, so just a quick technology check. You can see that pretty well, right?
Trey, this is Jared. If you could maybe just switch your screen because we're still seeing like the PowerPoint editor mode real quick. We can see your screen, but it's just not the PowerPoint slideshow.
Okay. Let's try this one.
Now we're good.
Now we're good. All right, perfect. Sorry about that. All right, so as David mentioned, I am Trey Leslie, and I am with Georgia Power, and I manage our customer engagement team within renewable development, within the Renewable Development Organization. And so real quick, guys, I want to just give you a quick overview of Southern Company and make sure you guys are fully aware of our Southern Company organization and who we are and what we do and what our plans are as we move down this transition to net zero carbon free energy. And so Georgia Power, the company I work for, is one of Southern Company's largest subsidiaries, one of our electric subsidiaries within our umbrella of several subsidiaries here in Southern Company. As you can see here, we have 3 different electric companies within the Southern Company umbrella, Alabama Power being one of them as well as Mississippi Power. But then we also have other subsidiaries such as Southern Link and Southern Nuclear, Southern Nuclear being the arm of our nuclear generating plants that we have across the enterprise, and then several other subsidiaries there. But then we also have a wholesale electric subsidiary called Southern Power, which is an unregulated arm that has generating facilities and transmission facilities across the United States. And then in 2016, we actually purchased Southern Company Gas as now one of our natural gas utilities subsidiaries up under the Southern Company umbrella. And we have 4 different gas electric gas companies across the United States. One here in the state of Georgia, Atlanta Gas Light, but then we also have Chattanooga Gas, Nitro Gas, and then up in Virginia, we have Virginia Natural Gas as well. So when we talk about decarbonization, guys, Southern Company, for those that don't know, made a goal to make sure that we move to net zero carbon emission, greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And we're well under our way to getting there today. If you see the quote in the bottom right, the top quote is from our Southern Company president and CEO, Tom Fanning, where he mentioned that we are confident that we're prepared and well positioned to meet the needs of our customers, employees, communities, and investors well into the future as we succeed to move to a net zero carbon future. And then the one below that is from our previous president and CEO here at Georgia Power, Paul Bowers, who just announced his retirement earlier part of this year, where we would definitely ensure that we will help Southern Company as our parent company meet that goal, but also make sure we have to do that through our integrated resource plan process to ensure that we are balancing not only the support of Southern Company, but the support of our regulators. As you guys know, Georgia Power is a regulated utility. So as you can see, our goal and our progress, guys, by 2030, our plan was to be at 50% reduction. We was actually at 52% reduction in 2020, but a good portion of that was due to last year being an anomaly of a year. As you guys know, the kind of year we had in 2020 with the pandemic. Loads were extremely low, so we was able to not have to dispatch a lot of our carbon intensive resources, but we feel certain with this year loads going back to normal, we may not be at that 50% range by this year, but we will be able to get to it by 2025, which is well ahead of our 2030 goal that we will plan to reach that net zero by 2050. So what does that mean for us, right? So Southern Company is changing our evolution and changing our energy mix. We use 2007 as our baseline year. And so anytime you will see any type of generation mix, we will always start at 2007. And that was because that was the year that our greenhouse gas or our emission was at the highest that it has ever been. And so we will see and start to see a large decrease or trend in decreasing energy mix or greenhouse gas energy mix starting from 2007. And so our electric utilities use a lot of coal and a lot of gas, but as you can see, starting in 2018 and even beyond to 2020, we are decreasing the amount of coal that we're using, and then in some turns increasing the gas. But then at the same time, you will also see an increase in the use of renewable energy as well. And so we have retired a little over 9,000 megawatts of coal over the course of since 2007, and we're expected to increase our renewable resources by 2022 of over 1,400 megawatts. We currently have 10,000 megawatts, and this is at a Southern Company level on our fleet. But then also we have 4.6 million smart meters, and what that does is allow us to real-time accurately see the load of our customers to be able to determine how the carbon intensive of these generating fleets and utilities are playing into the load that we have out there on the system. But what also helps us keep our load down is all of the work that we do around energy efficiency. We've spent $1.2 billion on energy efficiency since 2007. And then we're expected to have more than 1,800 megawatts of carbon-free resources in our portfolio by 2024. And so this is at a Southern Company level, and we're continuing to do a lot at the Southern Company level to ensure that we move towards that net zero carbon-free energy goal. So how do we get there? And so we break it down into these 5 tenets, right? Looking at coal in itself and essentially just transitioning out of coal and embracing that transition. But we want to make sure we do it in an orderly fashion and a cost-effective fashion, and make sure we're doing it in a fashion that is not detrimental to our generating fleet nor our customers. But then we start changing our foundation of our generating fleet, right? Our foundation used to be coal. Now our foundation is moving towards nuclear, hydro, and natural gas to make sure we're balancing that base load of resources. But then beyond there, we got to expand that foundation, right? So not only just utilizing nuclear, hydro, and natural gas, but expanding it to renewables, energy storage to make sure we're able to capture that renewable energy to utilize it throughout the day. But then also expanding the energy efficiency programs that we currently have in order to, once again, keep our emissions low. And then continue to look at emerging technologies. We have a huge R&D program within Southern Company that are always looking at emerging technologies across our generating fleet. And one way is our carbon capture program to make sure we're capturing the carbon right there real time before we emit it to the atmosphere. Looking at renewable natural gas, and then what are some of the next generation resources beyond what we're using today, such as nuclear, hydro, and natural gas? What are some of those next generation resources? But then thinking long term, the negative carbon concept, right? So now going below carbon. Once again, natural solutions, biogas energy. Biogas is huge for us here in the state of Georgia, as we have a lot of wood pellet companies across South Georgia. But then once again, looking at the carbon capture as an opportunity. But then what can we do to make it cost effective in order to make sure we reach that net zero carbon emissions? And so all of that is summarized on the right side here, as you can see. Once again, using natural gas to enable us to transition to a lower emitting generating fleet, getting out of the coal business, expanding to zero carbon resources such as renewables and nuclear. As you guys know, we are building 2 new nuclear plants outside of Augusta and Waynesboro, enhancing our energy efficiency programs, and then making sure we have negative carbon capture technologies to help us meet that net zero carbon goal. So then what about Georgia Power, right? So let's take it here to the state of Georgia. Once again, Southern Company is our largest subsidiary across all of the United States. But what are we doing right here in Georgia Power? This just gives you an overview of who we are in Georgia, 2.6 million customers, 77,000 miles of distribution lines, high customer satisfaction. Our rates are 14% below the national average, and we have about 6,700 customers 6,700 employees across the Georgia Power footprint. Here's our Georgia Power resource evolution mix. Once again, as you can see, back in 2007, just for Georgia Power, 45% of our generation mix was coal and only 18% was carbon free. Now by 2020, 23% of our capacity was coal, and we're looking at 30% carbon free energy. We're projected by 2025, 20% coal, 43% carbon free energy. So as you can see, guys, that evolution is happening, and we're moving down the path of making sure that we are moving closer to that net zero carbon energy. How do we do that? We do that through our integrated resource plan. Every 3 years, we go down to the Georgia Public Service Commission and talk through the integrated resource plan and talk through our load planning. What does our load forecast look like? How many customers will be on the system? The power delivery is how do we serve those customers, the equipment that we're going to need to get there. The demand side management is the energy efficiency part of that. How do we keep the loads low? But then the last part is the power generation. What kind of generating fleets will we need to, one, either retire or two, build to make sure we're meeting the needs of our customers, all while keeping reliability high and cost low for each one of our customers. This is what came out of our 2019 integrated resource plan, and we're already preparing for our 2022 integrated resource plan. And so as you can see out of the 2019 integrated resource plan, we committed to adding an additional 2,260 megawatts of new renewable energy that we will be building over the next 4 to 5 years. And we're already, once again, preparing for the 2022 integrated resource plan, where I feel certain we will add some additional new megawatts of renewable energy that's going to help us continue to grow our renewable portfolio here in the state of Georgia. And so this kind of shows you what that growth looks like. As you can see, back in 2012, 2013, very little renewable energy. And then by 2025, we will have close to 5,500 megawatts of renewable energy here in on the Georgia Power footprint in the state of Georgia. And so we continue to reevaluate and look at it and to make sure we're having a measured approach on how we go to market for this renewable energy. We want to make sure that we're also meeting the needs of our Southern Company goal, but then the needs of our customers that are out there across our footprint to ensure that we have enough renewable energy to make sure that we have good, clean, safe, and reliable energy for our customers. And so that's all I have. David, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Trey. I appreciate you telling us about Georgia Power and Southern Company. And now we will hear from Allie Kelly with the Ray. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Okay, are we able to see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
And everyone can hear me. All right, great. Hi, I am so excited to be a part of this webinar. I want to start by thanking David and the team at the Atlanta Regional Commission for including the RAY. Also, I see some longtime friends on the attendee list, so really excited to see y'all online and hope to see you in person really soon. My name is Allie Kelly. I'm Executive Director of the RAY, and I'm really excited to talk about the work of the RAY that involves clean energy. I really can't start talking about how the clean energy industry is changing without talking about how the transportation industry is changing and how it is disrupted. And I'm hoping that in the 8 minutes that I have that I can touch on a little bit of both clean energy and clean transport. Let me first just start by telling y'all where our name, the RAY, comes from. So Ray C. Anderson is in the DNA of the work at the RAY on the Ray Highway. Ray was the founder and CEO of Interface Carpet Company. He built his company from LaGrange, Georgia, which is in the western part of our state, very close to the Georgia-Alabama border. Ray Anderson not only built a billion-dollar company, the first to introduce carpet tile to the American market, but he was also the very first pioneer for corporate sustainability and for the circular economy. If you can imagine 1993, 1994, Clinton era in the White House, Ray Anderson was busy at Interface setting goals to go zero carbon, zero waste to landfill, more renewable energy, and more wastewater reuse. And so what you're looking at now is an 18-mile stretch of Interstate 85 that connects the cities of West Point and LaGrange. West Point, where Ray Anderson was born, and LaGrange, where Interface Carpet Company was born. This 18-mile stretch of Interstate 85 was designated as a memorial highway to Ray Anderson in the year 2014 after Ray's passing in 2011. So our former governor, Nathan Deal, worked with our state legislature and Ray's family, specifically Ray's youngest daughter, Harriet Anderson Langford, worked with our state government to designate this 18-mile stretch of I-85 in West Georgia as a legacy or memorial highway, honoring Ray Anderson and the work that he did to go zero carbon in the world, way before the rest of us were talking about clean energy and clean transport. And in this aerial map of the RAY, you can see some of the dozen or so projects that the RAY has brought to life over the last 5 years with Georgia DOT and the Federal Highways Administration. We have actually been building a sustainable highway ecosystem and proving that the technologies are available for use in the transportation sector today in order to go zero carbon, zero deaths, and zero waste. And all of our projects are driving at one or more of those goals. Before I go any farther, let's just level set on transportation today. So the transport sector in the US is responsible for 29% of carbon emissions. It's a very difficult carbon challenge for us to get our arms around because there's so much individual choice in the transportation sector. Allie decides what she's gonna drive, she decides where she's going to live and work. Thus, she decides what her commute is. And also in the private sector, fleet operators are making decisions about what kinds of vehicles are in their fleets and how the distribution network works. So the 29% carbon emissions from the transportation sector is a particularly high challenge for us to take on the United States. Trey's just finished talking about Southern Company and Georgia Power's work on the stationary emissions, and now we're talking about transportation emissions. So some good news, the projections are that in the year 2030, we may have as many as 20 million electric vehicles on our roads in the United States. That would be somewhere around 7 to 10% of our nation's fleet. And of course, we're all well aware of the new Biden administration's goals around electric vehicles and EV charging infrastructure. In fact, the White House wants to onboard 500,000 EV charging stations over the next 3.5 years. And some of those 500,000 charging stations will definitely be installed on our interstate system and on our highway system in Georgia and across the country. So to that end, before I go any farther, I want to talk to y'all about the work that we're doing outside of Georgia. So yes, we've established this test bed on I-85 on that 18-mile Memorial Highway for Ray Anderson. We've established really the premier test bed for sustainable and smart transportation tech in the country. And now we're starting to export our work and our projects to other states. Currently, we're engaged in either formal or informal partnerships with 14 states, including Georgia, and we're working with 24 transportation operators. A lot of this work actually involves clean energy. In fact, the states of Colorado, Texas, Maryland, Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, as well as Maine, are all engaging with Array on clean energy and clean transport projects. So let's quickly go over a couple of these with the 3 or 4 minutes I have left. So you're looking at one of the nation's first roadside solar arrays. This is actually a Georgia Power facility. It is owned, operated, and the power is being sold by Georgia Power, but it's using about 4.5 acres of federal highways property on the roadsides of the Ray Highway at exit 14. So if you see that tanker, looks like maybe a fueling truck at the bottom of the screen, that's I-85 going north towards the Atlanta airport in the city of Atlanta. The empty lanes above that tanker truck, that's I-85 going south towards West Point onto the Georgia-Alabama state line, the Chattahoochee River. And then the other set of lanes that you see just above the solar array are actually the exit lanes at exit 14. So we've taken one triangle or 1/4 of a traditional diamond interchange. It was flat, already cleared of trees, and frankly, it was fairly eroded, not much ground cover. And we've converted that 4.5 acres of federal highways property into a megawatt of solar energy generation. The other thing that's notable about this site, it's the only one in the United States on the roadside of the interstate system that's pollinator friendly. And we feel like this is a really important trend for us to be implementing in the United States when it comes to clean energy, is not only thinking about empty and underutilized land like our roadsides for clean energy generation, but also making sure that all of our solar sites are developed as pollinator friendly, because this enables us to, number one, secure the soils with native perennial vegetation that will grow root systems that can actually re-nourish and re-nutrient the soils, particularly on the roadsides. Our roadside soils are very depleted, and so incorporating pollinator-friendly solar projects on the roadsides can offer that additional benefit of re-nutrienting the soils, which makes them better capable of sequestering naturally carbon that might be captured from the plants themselves. Also, when we think about large-scale solar sites, potentially on agricultural lands, this becomes a really important practice because the vegetation can actually re-nutrient agricultural soils that may have become depleted, and you're providing habitat for wild pollinators who may then go and service farms that are still operating in the area. And in no other place in the Ray is that true. In West Georgia, where the interstate runs, we have local farms, blueberry farmers who really rely on native pollinators to help their farms to become as productive as possible. Also, with our partners at Esri, the providers of ArcGIS and ArcGIS Pro, the Ray and Esri have developed a mapping tool for state DOTs and other transportation operators. I'm just going to thumb through these slides, but with Esri's help, we're able to use real data sets from transportation operators, so we know exactly what roadside we have to work with. And then Esri's added tools like the solar radiation tool. You can see a right-of-way parcel in deep red color. That means high solar radiation tool, high solar radiation potential. Esri also developed a suitability tool that incorporates information like tree cover, slope, and elevation, as well as orientation. So we know not only what could we develop on the roadside as solar, but what should we develop. And you can see they also have a LiDAR point cloud that allows us to also see tree removal and tree presence. So sometimes transportation operators need to engage in tree removal for safety, and that's when we can come in and think about repurposing the newly cleared land for renewable energy generation. We don't support tree clearing for solar energy potential, but certainly if that were being done for something like transportation system safety, we'd want to come in and add value to the newly cleared land with clean energy generation. And then the Esri tool also includes a digital twin technology aspect that allows us to assess unintended consequences to the community. What you're seeing here is a solar array built up on an elevated roadside, and the solar panels actually obscure the view of a 6-foot person at a view shed. And so we can actually take away some of the solar panel rows in order to restore the view shed. All of this information for DOTs is expressed in terms of solar revenue based on local factors, local economic factors, and we can also express it as carbon reductions due to the solar energy generation potential, as well as cars taken off the road. So transportation carbon removed and vehicles themselves removed from the roadway. And I'll just close with this. We're very interested in the potential for the roadsides to host renewable energy, and we've proven on the Ray Highway, we've proven the case for that it is safe, that it is feasible, and that it is successful. We're really interested in understanding the roadside's potential to also host underground transmission, modern HVDC transmission lines, and the Federal Highway Administration and US DOT has signaled that they not only agree with these utilization opportunities for the roadsides, producing and transmission of clean energy using our empty roadsides on the interstate and highway system, but they're also very in favor of using our interstate properties for EV charging. And so what I'm showing you now on the Ray Highway is the visitor center at the Georgia-Alabama state line, where we offer 175 kW charging via CCS as well as CHAdeMO ports. And that clean transportation fueling option is aided by a 12-panel solar array. So we've got some clean energy being made available for clean transportation, but this is also a grid-connected site because we want to make sure that we've got EV charging available day, night, in any condition, sunshine or not. So with that, I'll bring my remarks to a close and just say thank you again. My contact information is listed. Please reach out to me. You can see the broad array of partners that we're working with across the country, and come find us on social media at the Ray Highway. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Allie. We really appreciate that. And now we will hear from Andrea Pinabel with South Base Institute. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Let me just, here we go. All right. Can you guys see that? Can you see the?
Nope, but we do see your email, so it might be a different screen.
It should be coming up.
Okay.
Let me see here. Let's try. Let's try that.
Yep, we're good.
All right, excellent. Well, hello everyone. I'm very excited to be here today. I've been asked to take a little bit of a different lens on today's presentation, thinking about not only energy equity, energy justice, and how all that is also taking into perspective on the clean energy and how the clean energy industry is changing. A little bit about Southface first. So for those of you who don't know, we are here in Atlanta. We have began as an all-volunteer organization promoting solar energy production around the celebration called Sunday, which was May 3rd, 1978. And since then, we've been in the search for clean energy solutions in response to the initially the fossil fuel crisis of the 70s, and has been evolving ever since to an organization focusing on reducing resource use while enhancing housing affordability, health, and well-being. And we also look at both the clean and renewable energy generation, as well as the demand side management, as Trey said earlier, on energy efficiency. We like to say here at Southface that the cleanest electron is the electron that's never been used. So energy efficiency is a place that we always start. So our purpose is to catalyze this regenerative economy. And what that means to Southface is a regenerative economy that is not just sustainable, but is additive over time. We as a society have been very extractive, not only in our vulnerable communities, but also in our natural resources. So how can we really get to a clean energy future unless we are thinking about being not only net neutral, but net positive? And for Southface, that means we do this through responsible resource use, energy, water, waste, etc., social equity. That means everybody needs to have access to clean and renewable energy solutions. And of course, the intersection of a healthy built environment for all. You know, Southface really works at that intersection of the natural and built environments. And there's no question that the growth of the built environment and our human activity in the last century has greatly impacted greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere, as well as impacted our temperatures worldwide. I think we've all been noticing crazy weather going on over the last, decade. It's getting crazier and crazier. And it has a multiple effect because it not only affects the weather in terms of how we generate our power, but it also affects things like urban heat island effect, which exacerbates not only the shocks and stresses of a resilient community. And in terms of what that means for carbon, it means that globally, 28% of carbon emissions worldwide come from operating our existing buildings. So it's not just the materials that we use to create, to build, and then to power the buildings, but it's also what does that mean for the long-term operations of all of those existing buildings. And you can see here, the average age of a US commercial building is 51 years, but 2/3 of those buildings will exist by 2050. And so we also have to focus not only on new buildings and new generation, but how do we make the existing building infrastructure, how do we make the existing building footprint smaller through energy efficiency, through resiliency mechanisms, and how do we ensure that our most vulnerable communities and our most low income and vulnerable people have the benefits of this clean energy future. So you think about the buildings, and then you think about us as people. I think as we come out of the pandemic, hopefully sometime soon, all of us are spending a lot of time in quarantine. And even before the pandemic, Americans spent upwards of 90% of their time indoors. And so that also affects what we're breathing and how that energy is generated. And being here in the South in a hot, humid climate, that means humidity and mold generation. It means, problems with open windows and how does that impact running your air conditioning? Dust and dander, ceiling fans, more generation, but it also circulates air. Obviously, VOCs are volatile organic compounds, and how do you really ventilate a home to be able to maximize energy efficiency and health at the same time? And this is not just a problem for Atlanta. This is a study that was done in 2016 by ACEEE, and it really looks at, I hope you all can see this, it looks at income, race and ethnicity, age, the green is tenure, and the kind of the orangish is housing type. So what you can see here is that low income adults, right, that are older than 65 have a very high energy burden. That dotted line that goes across the whole graph, that is the medium energy burden of the United States, which is 3.1%. And to level set definition, what energy burden is, it's the percentage of income spent on your home energy bills. So that includes your income as an individual or as a family compared with what your energy costs are. And then if you also kind of the third leg of that stool is how efficient or well-built is your home in order to have clean and effective energy efficiency mechanisms that allow you to reduce that energy burden. So if you think about the medium energy burden for across the United States is 3.1%. That means on a monthly basis, 3.1% of my net income would be going to pay for my utility bills. So kind of going back to the graph for a moment, the low income individuals that are older than 65, so our seniors, have on average across the United States 9.3% energy burden. And it goes down based on income. Then you look at race and ethnicity, Native Americans, then African Americans at 4.2, 4.1, and all the way down to white or non-Hispanic at 2.8. So certainly race and ethnicity have a very significant contribution to what energy burden statistics are. Renters versus owners, which you would think. And then what's really interesting is if you look at the housing type. So multifamily housing type is at the low, so that's the one on the far right at 2.4%, to low income multifamily at the other end. So if you think about a high-end condominium versus a low income multifamily, you're talking about 5.6% on the low income versus the 2.4%. So if we're really kind of thinking about how do we ensure a clean energy economy for all people, we really need to think about all of these different things. In addition, we have to think about the high energy burdens are also correlated with a higher risk of respiratory diseases, increased stress, economic hardship, and difficulty moving out of poverty. So these are systemic inequalities and barriers for us to getting to a more equitable, clean energy future. So, and you can see a little bit on a regional basis where Georgia lies, and in the Atlanta metro area, which I think is really interesting, there's only 6 metro areas that have a greater percentage of households with a high energy burden than the national average. And Atlanta only is behind Rochester, Riverside, Detroit, and Birmingham, Alabama. So it's certainly something that hits us very close to home, and we need to really focus on not only our demand side management, our housing solutions, our transportation solutions, but also looking at how we can get better and more equitable programs to those constituents. Studies have also shown that for low-income households and multifamily low-income households, bringing the housing stock just up to the median efficiency of a household nationally would eliminate about 35% of excess energy burden. So 35% just to get them to code and to get them to the median energy efficiency. This also includes reducing energy burdens from basically from 7.2% down to 5.9%. For African American, Latino, and rental housing, so respectively 42, 68, and 97% of their excess energy burdens could be eliminated just by raising household efficiencies to the median. The graph to the right, these are low income defined as less than or equal to 80% of AMI or area medium income. And if you look at where Atlanta is, and this is just below Memphis, New Orleans, Birmingham. So Atlanta is number 4, where the little orange square is the lowest energy burden quartile, and the blue is the highest. So in terms of span of energy burden over the metro area, and then the median energy burden for that metro area. So Atlanta's, we have some work to do as we kind of think about how do we re-engage some of these programs in order to achieve this equitable future. And then I want to really focus on one other part before I kind of talk through some solutions. And that is this integrated approach of clean energy, energy efficiency, and healthy homes. In a lot of low-income households, there's decisions that are being made to not turning on air conditioning because of the high burden. Even though our energy costs are fairly low here in the Atlanta metro area, that still, because of the housing stock, their energy costs are very high. And so in that example, by turning off an air conditioning unit, whether it's a wall or whether it's central air, essentially what you're doing is you're not extracting the humidity out of that household and introducing contaminants such as mold spores, other pollen, other types of irritants for asthma. And as you can see here, for asthma specifically, we have a very high asthma rate. Almost 9% of the children and 8% of the children currently have asthma in Georgia. And this is our 2018 statistics from the National Center for Healthy Housing. And we know that in low-income housing is actually much, much higher. And so an emergency room visit, we know, is about $5,000 to $6,000 versus maybe a $300 to $400 air conditioning bill. But it's a balance and a decision that these low-income families are making every day. At Southface, we have been tackling this through a program we called HERE, which is Healthy and Efficient Residential Environments. It's a mix of energy efficiency and health interventions, while looking at both pre and post health assessments to determine whether or not we have improved those social determinants of health, like missed days of work, missed days of school, emergency room visits, and other things along those lines, really focusing on those low to moderate income single and multifamily housing. So to some strategies, I hate to have all the downers and not have some really good strategies. So there are a lot of strategies that are out there, and there's a lot of strategies that can be employed. I think the trick is, and what we try to focus on at Southface, are what are the scalable solutions that we can reach as many people as we possibly can, and make sure that it has a business case as well as the social case, because we know that there is a financial and social cost to energy efficiency and clean energy solutions. So the first of those are really on the design side, designed to meet the needs of a highly burdened community, thinking about green space, thinking about tree cover, reducing heat island effect, providing for weatherization, and thinking about how do you connect these communities together. Ramping up investment in low-income housing, retrofits, energy efficiency, and weatherization. We know that hopefully some monies will be coming down from the Biden-Harris administration to be able to really focus on getting these low-income housing stock into a more efficient place. One of the things I was really excited to hear lately is there's going to be, as part of the infrastructure plan, a section of money to actually get the homes that are even too bad for weatherization up to a level where we can actually weatherize, so that you have almost a two-step process for health and safety, and then weatherization, so that people can live there, age in place, and stay there for a long time. And finally, improve program design, delivery, and evaluation through best practices and community engagement. So those of us who know Southface know that we are very data-driven. We really want to ensure that these programs are working, that there's good quality control, and that people understand the technology, whether it's simple, like an LED light bulb, or complicated, like a building automation system in a commercial building, that they know how to run it, operate it, and maintain it over time. There's also some really interesting things that are just starting to percolate as part of the administration. First is Justice 40. So Justice 40 was started through an executive order that directs the federal agencies to direct 40% of the benefits of the federal climate action to disadvantaged communities. And this is really inspired by a lot of the frontline communities of color and environmental justice leaders from across the country who have the solutions but don't have traditionally don't have access to the resources, whether it's technical assistance, financial resources, or access to the decision makers. And so Justice 40 was really an intent to better connect the dots between resources and money and the communities who are really in the field doing the work. And then we have been an ancillary partner to the Justice 40 Accelerator, which is started by the Solutions Project, but also Partnership for Southern Equity, Hummingbird. Those two are both local Atlanta, as well as Groundswell, who's in DC, and Elevate Energy in Chicago, to really act as that incubator, to act as that accelerator, to connect not only organizations that are on the ground level, but also to connect them with technical expertise like Southface and other organizations to really help them through that process. So we're really excited to see where that goes over time. And then there's been a lot of talk about the clean energy workforce and what the energy efficiency workforce looks like. Those who work in the weatherization field, there is a level called the quality control inspector that actually inspects all of the work being done on the income homes. The average age of those workers are 62 years old. And so we know we have a huge opportunity to provide economic and upward mobility, to introduce these energy efficiency and clean energy jobs like solar jobs into the marketplace. And how do we do that effectively and also align those individuals with the jobs over the long term? That's a really important part of what we're thinking about now. And there's certainly just a tremendous amount of opportunity to support the local communities. And I think finally, it's innovative financing solutions. So this picture is taken on the roof of the SAE school, which is over on the west side of Atlanta towards Six Flags. And we worked with this school. They went through 3 rounds of our Good Use program, which is a program that is a matching grant program that supports nonprofits through energy efficiency transformation. And then they went through 3 rounds of that. And then we worked with some other partners to get them to 100% solar. And it's the first 100% solar and battery backup school in the state. So we're really proud of this. And we had to work on a very interesting financial mechanism where we were to align not only the tax incentives and the tax credits, but also investors into that SEPA construct in order to get solar onto the school. Because being a nonprofit, you know, like a lot of nonprofits, a lot of churches, a lot of other schools, they are not able to take on or benefit from the tax incentives. So we have to think about innovation around financing if we're really going to move the new clean energy economy. And then there's some other really interesting things like PACE. That is finally been approved for the city of Atlanta. They're starting with commercial PACE. Advanced Atlanta is leading that along with Y-Green. I think there's opportunities for the commercial PACE program to really take off and be successful. And then obviously Georgia Power has a lot of programs, both their HEAP program, which is on the housing side, their low income, high efficiency programs for lower income folks, the LIHEAP programs, as well as all of the commercial marketplace partnerships and the commercial building programs that they have. So I would encourage everyone to take advantage of those as well. If you want to get more involved in what we're doing here at Southface, there's a few ways you can do that. You can become a member. We are a member organization, both individual as well as company memberships. You can donate. A lot of our programs are made possible by donations by corporate partners and sponsors. And so if you want to be part of that, certainly would love to have that conversation with you. Also, Visionary Dinner is coming back in person this year. It's October 21st at Flourish. And so if you go to our website, southface.org/visionary dinner, you can learn more about this year's event. And obviously volunteer. If it's not a Southface, you know, volunteer in your community and you'll effectively be helping the green transformation one volunteer hour at a time. So I've really appreciated my opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you so much. And thank you again to the ARC and to my fellow panelists.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I'd like to bring all of our panelists back now, if we could, for the Q&A portion of the webinar. Great. And thank you all so much for your presentations. Learning about your clean energy efforts in Georgia make me very optimistic that we can meet the carbon challenges that we are facing. For our first question, I would like to ask Trey if he could help us just briefly understand the differences between clean energy and renewable energy. As someone that's kind of new to understanding this, I recognize that there is a distinction between those, and I was hoping that maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, David. Happy to do so. And so typically, clean energy and renewable energy are often interchangeable or used interchangeably, but in some sense, in some terms, they cannot be, right? So when you think about renewable energy, it is typically derived from resources that can be multiplied or replenish themselves, right? So when you think about sun and or wind, both of those are resources that can replenish themselves. And while clean energy itself comes from a resource that has zero carbon emissions or zero greenhouse gas, right? So all clean energy isn't renewable energy. However, all renewable energy can be considered clean energy, right? So when you think about the idea of some clean energy, although sun and wind are considered renewable and clean energy, you do have some other clean energy that's not renewable, such as nuclear energy as well. And so just depending on whether it's renewable or not can determine whether or not it's clean energy. So that's typically how you derive the two.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The next question I have is for Ali. And I was wondering if you could provide us with a few examples of the clean energy systems that are found in the Southeast US. I know that Trey touched on this, talking about the Southern Company and Georgia Power mix. But I wonder if you could maybe expand a little bit on that and give a couple of examples.
Yeah, I mean, the Southeast has abundant solar resources. It's clear that Georgia is one of the leaders in the Southeast for onboarding solar energy. Florida and North Carolina are racing to catch up. South Carolina, I think, just passed some legislation that will probably onboard more solar energy in that state. Alabama is a little bit farther behind, and then also into even Mississippi and Louisiana. There's a lot of opportunity in the Southeast for us to work on onboarding more solar energy. We at the Ray would like to see there be a balance of land usage for solar energy systems. There is a trend which has great economics of using hundreds, if not thousands, of acres in traditional agricultural areas of our state and other states. And on the one hand, it's a great opportunity for farmers who are seeing, changes in their own agricultural economics to produce something different from their lands, right? And so they can get into partnerships with Georgia Power, other solar developers, and they can have, a return on their investment in solar energy infrastructure for 20, if not 30 years or more. The flip side of the coin is that our population continues to grow and our need to feed the population will grow over time. And there's some concern that in 20 years or 30 years, that we will be searching for arable lands to support the agriculture that will then go to feed our people, right? And there's a certain, it's a market force, but it's also just as Ray Anderson used to say, status quo is a powerful opiate. So once large tracts of land go into solar infrastructure, There are forces at work that will, trade out older solar panels for new solar panels and extend the agreement. So a 20-year or a 30-year land agreement over hundreds, if not thousands of acres of agricultural land may actually encumber that land for 50 years or more. And so, there's a real concern right now about the way that we're utilizing land for clean energy generation. And we have to balance our concerns around climate change with the concerns about land use for how we meet the moment of and meet the challenge of climate change with renewable or renewable clean energy resources that also help us to properly manage our land, not only for today and our challenges today, but the needs of the future. So, I'll just close by saying next time you're on the interstate, take a look at all the land. There is, by our count, about 52 or 53,000 acres of roadside land on the U.S. interstate system in the 48 lower states that are immediately available and appropriate for solar utilization. And by our rough math, only looking at the diamond and cloverleaf interchanges, I'm not even talking about rest areas, truck parking, park and ride, only at our diamond and circular or cloverleaf interchanges, we think that we can onboard 22,000 megawatts of generating capacity. And rough math, that could power 12 million vehicles. So when I say that we might have 20 million electric vehicles by 2030, we can get to 3/4 of those vehicles clean power from roadside solar, back it up with backup battery storage and microgrids, or go ahead and grid connect it because the grid tracks a lot of the interstate system. But we can offer clean energy for clean transport for 12 out of 20 million EVs by 2030 just by using the roadside land. And that seems like a great immediate way to balance both our land use concerns with our insatiable appetite for clean energy to meet the needs of clean transportation over the next decade.
Thank you, Ellie. I don't know that I'll be able to look at an interchange and the land around it in quite the same way now that I can tie numbers, megawatts and acreage to the space. I would.
There's no vaccine for it. There's no vaccine. Like you can't unsee the potential that the roadsides can unlock.
Yeah, that's I certainly hope there isn't, because I think it's going to be a great thing to be able to recognize that now, and hopefully others will as well. I'd like to turn the conversation back for a moment, back to the equitable access issue. And Andrea, you touched on this during your presentation, and I'd like to just explore it for another minute if we could. So it seems clear that not everyone in our region has access to affordable clean energy. And I'm wondering if you could talk a bit more about any thoughts you have. You touched on solutions a little bit, and I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd like to add to that, and if there's anything that citizens could do to maybe help move that effort forward.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe that historically, with the injustices of a lot of the planning, we do have as I touched on, additional burden for our low-income communities. And it's not just around energy and energy access as well. It's thinking about, if you think about Midtown, over to areas of Vine City, you have beautiful trees, a lot of tree cover, and you get less and less and less until you have really just pavement. And I think that not only talks about the urban heat island effect, which would increase the amount of energy that a homeowner would have in order to cool their home, because of all of the heat coming off of the concrete and the roads and the parking lots and all of that, and not having that extra shade. You also, with all that imperviousness, you also have a lot more flooding issues in those neighborhoods as well. In more affluent neighborhoods, you have more green space, and so you have more of the storm water that can percolate back into the groundwater systems, as opposed to running off and flooding in low-lying areas when you don't have access to those streams and creeks and other green spaces. And so All of those things just multiply on one another. And there are, things that we can do. I think, thinking about the redevelopment and our focus around the Atlanta metro area and affordable housing or housing in general, or our planning, the Tim Keene, our planning commissioner, has an urban plan, and making sure that we're thinking through accessibility. And it's not just a luxury for green space, it actually helps to improve health, it helps mental health, it provides lower urban temperatures, it'll reduce energy burn. So we can't think of anything, including energy, in a box. All of these things are very much interwoven, and they are more of a systemic problem or systemic opportunity to reduce and to make, in this case, energy efficiency more equitable. The other thing that I would mention is that, the metro area, and specifically the city of Atlanta, has not only a clean energy plan, but a resiliency plan. And they're a little bit different. And the resiliency plan is to ensure that the city of Atlanta is able to overcome short-term shocks and long-term stresses. So short-term shocks like a hurricane, or let's say a strike, or parts of 85 being closed because there was a fire and so people needed transportation, to long-term stresses like homelessness, long-term energy burden, crime. And we are already getting climate immigrants coming up from Florida. We saw it after all the hurricanes, from Houston and from the Gulf Coast, and now from Florida. And as these things are continue to happen, thinking about, even that building down, that terrible tragedy in Miami, there was groundwater coming up underneath that building. And when you have groundwater coming up underneath the limestone, that's brackish water, it's going to erode. This is not the first time that's happened, and it's not going to be the last. And so we, as a city that's a little bit higher elevation, need to be thinking about what is that resiliency opportunity for us, so that we can get, basically, according to the RC, the city of Denver is going to be moving here within the next 20, 25 years. How are we going to feed, have fresh water? How are we going to provide energy, and how are we going to provide for equitable energy in this very changing demographic, but also very changing climate situation, where we are going to have attrition, right? We're going to have a lot of people coming to Atlanta naturally, plus we're going to have a lot of climate immigrants coming into our city, and we need to be able to have the systems to be able to support that. And I guess the last thing that I would say to your question around what individuals can do, I think there's a lot. I mean, I think everybody can do their part. Energy efficiency, by us reducing a little bit we're having here, it'll help Georgia Power not have to build any more power plants, because we're all kind of doing our part. We were in a home down in the south of Georgia. We were doing some energy efficiency and health and safety work through here, and they were terrified of a $15 a month increase in their expenses. So whether it's rent or energy, and $15 will make or break some of these individuals. So I think we all, like we did when we had the water wars, right? We all kind of did our part, and then collectively that made a very significant contribution. So we didn't have to stop growth. We didn't have to stop economic development, which is really important to our region, for our tax base, for our job growth, and for travel and tourism. So I think we all have a personal responsibility, as well as you can always volunteer, help other organizations, and work with your local NPUs in the city or other organizations to really drive those values forward.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We did receive one question from the audience that I'd like to pass along, and I know that we're running a little bit long on time, so I don't know that I'll be able to get to all of my questions, but I wanted to touch on the one audience question. And this was for Trey. an audience member would like to know if Georgia Power or Southern Company has any plans for offshore wind power generation.
That is a great question. And so I mentioned in my slides how we're in the process of preparing for our upcoming integrated resource plan that we file every 3 years, and we're filing one this January with the Georgia Public Service Commission. And so we're having a lot of conversation internally to determine whether or not offshore wind is viable in the state of Georgia. We are doing some due diligence pre-work today to even maybe site land, site location to see where that may or may not make sense. And so right now it's a little bit too early to make that determination, say yes, we will or won't do it. But I will tell you, we are looking at it very heavily and very, very hard to make sure that it makes sense. Please make sure to understand that everything we do, because we are a regulated utility, we want to make sure that one, it makes sense economically, but two, it also makes sense for all of our customers, such that we're able to continue to keep those prices low, such as from an Andrea standpoint, such that our even our affluent customers are okay, but then our low to moderate income customers are not negatively impacted at the same time. So we're always considering that, and that is one of the biggest reasons for our integrated resource plan that we file every 3 years.
Thank you very much, Trey. I think we are at a little after 3:40 now. And I think we should probably wrap this up for today. And I just want to, again, thank each of our panelists for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us and share your knowledge and expertise with the audience today. And I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today as well and making these webinars possible. So this will conclude the Atlanta Regional Commission's webinar on how clean energy industry is changing. And this is recorded, so you can find the link to the recording for today's webinar by visiting the atlantaregional.org//webinars page. And for those that would like to see this later, you can go out there. We should have that posted in the next maybe day or so. And yeah, I wish everyone a healthy and prosperous 2021. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Bye.